Hello, everyone. The Scottish Nationals is over. It took place this weekend, and I have the results for everyone. I made predictions and everything, and I'll go over everything with you today now. Right. So, this is the results of the Scottish Nationals 2023. My predictions were that Indian tank platoons, which were basically everywhere, they would win. Um, that we also might see someone break the Stuart meta a little bit, because Stuart meta is a thing, right? We saw a lot of Stuart at the Scottish Nationals, and I had predicted that Gary, Richard, Graham, Alistair, and Chris, in that order, would win the top five. Now, if you don't know these predictions, I'm trying to just reading off the lists. I try to just see which lists, how do I rate them from 1 to 5, 5 being the strongest, and and just based on that, who would then win this tournament? Um, we know that this is inaccurate. I don't even believe that this is a thing that you can read a list and then predict who will win. But we're getting to a place where you can see a little bit just based on lists. Um, and I was very excited because I knew most of these players, if not personally, then by reputation, which meant that I could also sort of put that into my computer and start seeing what I would predict happen. And pretty much what I thought would happen did. But the predictions that I presented beforehand, they were just based on lists, not about knowing the players. Although, of course, I could be biased. I mean, I know all of these players, um, and I sort of could. This could influence my evaluation of their lists a little bit, although I don't think it did, but it could. So these predictions and the results and all of this is not very scientific, but it still shows something interesting, right? So how did I do? Well, these are the final placings. Richard won. Johnny Curran came second. Richard had 29 points, which was a staggering amount of victory points. He killed 39 dice. The second most killing player was Alistair Unicom in sixth place with 37 dice. Russell took third place, Graham Thompson fourth, and Chris Davis fifth. Gary Morgan was seven, right after Alistair, and Johnny Ferg was eighth. Gervin took ninth, and Paul Wickens 10th. The rest of the players are all the way down here. I think some of the players down near the bottom, I think maybe Phil Mason dropped out on day one. I'm not sure. That was the rumor I heard anyway. So, yeah. And I think that ended up making Paul Walker, seen here in the background, actually step in and play a few games as well. Now, this had the weird result of having Russell, who was in the lead for British champion, overall British champion for this year, actually being caught up by um, by Richard. And this meant, actually, because they were exactly equal on points, that they had to share the title of the first overall British champion 2023. And here they are with the trophy, both holding it, maybe pulling a little bit each of them. And the really funny bit was that not only were they in the tournaments were they exactly on point with each other, they had actually also played each other 3 times. Each of them had one win, and then they had a draw. So they were completely equal at that point. I would suggest that they go back and look at play by play and just count the kill dice because, oh man, not having one champion, but of course, if they can share the trophy, then everything's good. So congratulations to both of you, both Russells and Richard. Well done and well played, gentlemen. Uh, Now, so my reality check was that my top 5 did not come into the top 5, but they did pretty okay. Gary came 7th, Richard 1st, Graham 4th, Alistair 6th, and Chris 5th. Johnny, Johnny Curran, he came 2nd, which was a surprise, but then a surprise that I was pretty happy about. And I'll get back to why. The other surprises just based on lists, not on players, because if I had to pick players, I thought that maybe Rosler would win this, but his list was not for me. It was he was low on order dice, but he came 3rd. Johnny Ferg, and this was a huge surprise. Congratulations, Johnny. I'll get back to why this was a surprise, but that was really a surprise. He came 8th. Not based on player. It's not a surprise based on who you are, John, here at all, but on the list. Gervin, of course, he came 9th. Again, I would just, having looked at the players, I would have placed him in the top 10 as well. And Paul Wickens, I also would have placed him in the top 10, and he came 10th. Now, so what happened? I was 60% accurate based on lists, which is pretty much what I expect by now. But I was actually 100% accurate if we expand it to the top 7. So I think I'm getting better at this, or maybe it's just knowing the players that influenced my thinking here. Because I was really close. There were a few surprises where good players actually brought armies that I thought, well, maybe this is not the best army, and they still did well. But all of the players where I thought this is a decent player, this is a really good army list, they all came in the top 7. So that's pretty good. I may be getting more accurate. I'm not sure. Did the meta break? Absolutely not. 7 out of 10 of the top 10 armies were British Indians, which sucks for the diversity of the meta. Yeah, I know. But this maybe also is speaking to a larger issue where TOs, we really need to start comping the British Indian combo. I don't think British Indians should be allowed, both the forward artillery observer and the Indians. It's just when you allow that, I don't think it's overpowered necessarily. It's not that I'm taking away any of the victories that you guys had over there, but when you allow that, you're allowing too much power, and as you can see here, this will solidify the meta in a big way. Many players, and many of the good players, brought that because that is the best combo that they can have. Of course it is. So I think it's one of the things that we should disallow for just the diversity of the meta, for us trying to see more than one nation, and maybe more than one nation in the top 10. Because it was very mono in the top 10. Only one army was not a British army, and that was Chris's Soviet tank platoon. So that it was extremely, the Indians have it all the way down, more or less here. 4 out of 10 were tank platoons, which I also expected this. That the tank platoons, there weren't many tank platoons being taken, but the ones that were taken were all Indian tank platoons or Chris's Soviet tank platoon, and most of them did really well. This is what I would expect. Tank platoons most of the time beat non-tank platoons. And if you're not taking a tank platoon, I think you should be taking a dual platoon, because only one platoon in the top 5 were in the top 10 were not either a tank platoon or a dual platoon. So 5 out of 10 were dual platoons, 4 out of 10 were tank platoons. Only one was a single platoon, which is very low, but expected. As for trying to break the meta, Michael Christensen tried to break the meta using Recce. It didn't work, especially in kill points missions. He struggled. Just because everything he was bringing SAS jeeps, and they were cool and could recce, and they could even hurt Stuarts. He killed Stuarts with the HMGs, but they were soft-skinned, and if your opponent is a little lucky, then he'll roll that 6 and kill your jeep. Um, so it wasn't enough to win the kill point missions. Fanatical Japanese, as Benny had brought, did not make their comeback. Both Benny and Michael ended in the middle, and didn't really break anything as such, even though they were trying. Now, the one guy that I have to mention here, and I sort of alluded to it before, that is Johnny Ferg. Johnny Ferg came into the pack here late. He got a cancellation place, and he brought this list that I have in the background here. I'm not sure you can see it, but it's British Indians, but it's very, very unusual in its build. It's a single platoon, and he is bringing double artillery observers. So he brought the free artillery observer and another artillery observer. So that's 2 artillery observers, making him able to pin down a lot of enemy units. And at the same time, he had seen the pack, and he was sort of in tune to what would be happening. So he had brought anti-tank stuff. He brought a 6-pounder anti-tank gun, which is highly unusual in competitive play. We mostly don't see those being used at all. But it is a 5+ medium anti-tank gun. And he had brought a Pia team, a flamethrower team, so he had brought all the little teams, everything he had, with the exception of 1 unit of 5 Gurkha paratroopers. He had stuff that could hurt and kill tanks all through his army. He had a Stackhound heavy armored car. He brought a Sherman 11A, which is the heavy anti-tank gun. So he was geared up, tooled up to kill Stuarts. And I think this is rather clever. That brought him into 8th place, both being a good player, of course, but also doing something counter-meta actually can work. Is the Sherman 2A 11A, worth it because it's 230 something points? No, maybe not. But you were actively seeing him try to counter the meta, and I think that heavy AT gun may have killed a few Stuarts over the course of 5 games. So I think that this was a rather clever idea, and this just shows that even though there is a meta, and it's not broken, you can, if you know that this meta is there, try to counter it and do well. So that is the encouraging thought for today. So what's next? Well, right after the event, I got a little sneaky insight. I bribed a few people, and I got a few people to look over other people's shoulders, and this is what I heard. That the Nationals, the Scottish Nationals 2024, is going to be 1,500 single tank platoon. It's going to be tank war, gentlemen. This is going to be amazing. What I would suggest is that they try to maybe do a dice cap on the 1,500, which could be interesting in itself, but that would try to force people into not bringing all Stuarts. Although, come to think of it, at 1,500 points, I don't think you'll see all Stuarts. It's going to be really interesting, isn't it? It's going to be 6 games, fought over 2 days, 2 hours and 15 minutes per game, so you're going to have to play quickly. Again, held in nightly games in Bathgate, and it will be in September 2024. The missions will be from the Bolt Action Alliance pack. So that's the announcement, and right, let's see if we can all make it to Scotland next year. It looks to be cool. Right, that's it for me. Cheers, everyone. See you in the next video. Ciao.